What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.
Welcome to the first Red Man Group streaming live from the 21 Convention Patriarchs Edition 2019. For the past 3 days, myself, this panel, and all the men who attended have been talking about fatherhood, family, what it means to be a patriarch, and all that comes with it. Today I'm joined by Texas Dom, Sam Botta, Tanner Guzzy, Rollo Tomassi, Elliott Hulse, and Pat Campbell. We're going to be talking about red pill, fatherhood, and religion. Later in the episode, we're going to have a Q&A from the men in the audience, and it's live. We're doing this thing live. Listen, all of these men have come together for one cause. They've come together to talk about being a patriarch and what that means. We've been having speeches, dinners, meals, drinks, forging bonds, growing that network, because in our day and age, we don't have that at home. We don't have too many motivated fathers who are getting after it, too many red pill aware men we can have these discussions with. And when we talk about discussions, I'm talking all the things that are off limits. Today we're talking about religion. There is no panel anywhere that has ever been assembled with the diversity that we have here, who are willing, while dissenting opinions may be had, are to have those discussions and to say how they are doing it and how other men can take the knowledge and apply it to their lives to deal with the issues they're struggling with. But before we dive into that heavy topic, let's talk patriarchs. So Tex, how's the event been?
This has been fantastic. This was something that I needed when I was 30 and didn't have. So I think that being able to assemble this group together, be able to assemble the men in the audience, be able to ask the questions, be able to talk offline, be able to hit real life issues live, right square between the eyes is what it's all about. That's what we're doing this week.
Sam.
After spending all these years in Hollywood and understanding that little things like all the major hit songs are focused on 6-year-old girls. Not the mom in the car that's 36, but the 6-year-old girl. This convention is the most important thing that could happen because men need each other and need this knowledge.
Intergenerational change is happening here. I think that's one of the most incredible aspects of the whole thing is this is going to last years. This is changing years down the road. It's just absolutely insane. Tanner, how's it been? You're definitely a patriarch.
I've absolutely loved this because as much as I've genuinely and thoroughly enjoyed attending other 21 conventions, speaking and being part of the events, there's a certain weight and gravity to the conversations that are being had, to the topics that are being discussed, and it feels like as a result of that, there's an increase in the caliber of the men. I've watched them grow. There's an increase in what we believe ourselves to be capable of as we kind of try and build up to what that weight and that gravity is. And so it's been really fun to be part of something that really is leveling us all up.
So we had a conversation, I believe it was the first day, where we said, these are our people.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, when you're online and, I'm writing the family alpha, I'm that guy, I'm talking about the fatherhood and family and something like this. I mean, to have an event, to be able to give a keynote speech to other fathers, you face different challenges than the single men. You face different challenges than, those who've not created life. So it's interesting to come into a room where everybody gets what it is I'm talking about, and I get what they're talking about. And I was like, these are my people. They understand when I'm talking about fatherhood, leading sons, daughters. They get it. It's been incredible to see each of these men grow just in the past 3 days.
Yep.
Rollo.
Me.
You're the godfather of the red pill,
Yeah.
a father, and a patriarch.
Yes.
What do you think of it?
When we started the Red Man Group, I didn't really see it going much further than just a couple, few guys getting together and talking about just some red pill issues, but it's sort of snowballed into a lot of, something a lot bigger and a lot more important, I think. And now, as part of that, we decided that we wanted to expand the show to include different I don't want to say niches, but like just different demographics and guys that are different phases or different stages of their lives right now. I feel pretty confident saying everybody that's on this panel this morning is, we're well out of our 20s, and we're not, we're not out there slaying it in the clubs or anything like that. But there is a definite need for not only just brotherhood, but and coming together and talking about our collective experiences. Well, those experiences are very diverse. So while the main event or the main convention, we have a focus that's kind of like as spread out as possible, where this one is like we're talking more about like the individual experiences of men who are in various phases of raising a family, raising kids, being married, maybe divorced, maybe not. There's just a lot of need, I think, to expand men's understanding of where it is that they are in life. Like when I wrote the second book, when I wrote Preventive Medicine, I wrote about a timeline of what men can expect from women at different phases of their maturity. And I think I probably should update that or write something else where there's sort of like seasons in men's life as well, and maybe do sort of an analogous timeline for that as well. So what this event is about is really men that are at different phases of their own maturity, where maybe they're trying to get back into the sexual marketplace, maybe they're not, maybe they're trying to work out some issues with their wives, maybe they're not, maybe they're great parents and maybe they're having trouble, they're struggling. But the conversation needs to be had, because the way that our social order is today is it tries to isolate men, and it's becoming easier and easier to isolate men today because of the internet. We look at the internet and we think of it as this big extroversion, and it's really not. It's really an introversion. I've been watching some YouTube videos, sort of like best practices for how to run a YouTube channel, and in a few of them, the best advice I think I've gotten so far is when you're addressing the audience, you address it as you, and not as you guys or collectively, because most people, when they're online, they're watching it by themselves. They're like, they're watching a thing like that. They're just solitary. And we like to think that it's this big collective thing, but it is a way of isolating men, whereas this event is a way of bringing men together to have a group discussion, an exchange of ideas. It's a marketplace of ideas, really, is what it is. And obviously, there's nothing else like it. And seeing that and knowing that there was like that hunger for it, that's why we hit you up to do the Patriarchs Edition of the Red Man Group. And that was an extension of this whole thing, and wanting to address men who are at different phases and different seasons of their lives. And I think it's been very successful.
Absolutely.
And I can see us doing other conventions that are also more focused on other aspects of men's lives as well. So, of course, the big convention in October is more generalized, but it's nice to be able to sort of draw people together, men of a certain age, together, and then share those experiences. And that's what we're doing right here, because again, there's nothing like this.
That's the note I took.
Yeah.
When you guys hit me up with the Red Man Group Patriarch, there's no channel like that that's having the discussions we're having about that aspect of fatherhood.
And they don't want you to have it.
And that's why we have to keep talking.
They want you to stay isolated. That's how, if anybody saw my talk, that's how how the village keeps you locked down. It's a means of control. If we're not getting together and we're not talking and we're not meeting together as men, as a council of men, that's really what I see this is. It's a council on masculinity, on being a patriarch. A lot of people want to say that, this is all just conservative stuff, and it's not. It's men coming together and just comparing notes is what it is. And we don't all agree on everything, but we don't have to agree on everything. But what we do have to do is come together and start a dialogue. Because if we don't, what is it if we don't stay together, if we don't hang together, we will surely hang apart. And I think that was Benjamin Franklin that said something like that. And I've been thinking about that as we've been going through a lot of the censorship and the things that we've been dealing with right now. And that censorship is to silence you. It is to make conversations like this impossible, because they don't want men coming together, because we're stronger together than we are apart, and they know that. And that's why this is so important.
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, we're just going to continue to have these conversations. You know, the Patriarch Red Man Group was generating interest, was bringing, hey, let's get these discussions going before the convention. And then so many people tuned in, and so many people are on the chat, and so many people are just supporting the message, and it keeps on growing. So we're like, this is going to continue. And again, this is not the end. We didn't reach a finish line here. This is the starting point for all of us. So I'm looking forward to it. Elliott, you just had a Q&A with your father on this stage. It was incredible to sit there and see the patriarch of the patriarch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how has this convention been? To live up to the expectations you had coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no question that we're living in a jungle, but it's a decadent jungle, a jungle of degenerates. And in the same way that we spoke about the way of the man being the way of the gang and the way of the chimp, and that we bet the chimp, our primal instinct is to band together and to go for blood. And right now, of course, we're not going for blood in terms of safety, security, and hunting, but we're going for blood in slaying the degeneracy and the decadence and building a moral landscape so that we can protect our young, so that we can lead our wives and our children, and to bring forward a new world, build a new world out of the ashes of this one that's crumbling around us. And it is 100% up to the men to do that. And I understand that they want to keep us separate so that we can't do that. But there's one thing that they can't do, is to keep us separate. And it's moments like this, and it's events like this, and it's men like the men in this room that will hold the burning ember for the new fire that's rising.
Being able to bear that burden too. When we talk about people being silenced, you know, I think of our founding fathers, when they all put their name to that paper, they knew they were signing it. And this is live. Mm-hmm. All of our heads right now are just sitting out there. All of us have online sources that can just be chopped off because we spoke about fatherhood, because we broke away from the narrative. Mm-hmm. Yet here we are, shoulders back, ready to do it.
Mm-hmm. Take strong men.
Strong patriarchs to lead these guys. Pat, last but not least, how's it been?
Lot to say. You know, I'm looking around the room, thinking about a number of things, and the great thing about this is it's a place for us to come together where you can talk freely and share ideas without fear of repercussions or, punishment. We've seen people lose jobs because they've been involved in the red pill community, people be, deplatformed, things of that nature. But we're all pretty much like-minded in here. And my reason for coming to this particular event was to share with you any knowledge that I've gained along the way, in hopes that it will help you wherever you are in your particular journey. And the thoughts, this whole room represents one thing. It represents the natural order. The natural order. The father, the dad, as head of the family. The mother, the children. Not that long ago, that wasn't a radical idea. Now, if you believe that, you're the weirdos. We're the freaks. And I'm thinking about this room, it's almost like the catacombs, because we have to meet in secret. We can't go out in public and announce what we're talking about for fear of repercussions or some sort of punishment or things of that nature. But what I hope everybody walks away with from this weekend, I'll keep it in religious terms. Think of yourself as apostles, okay? Think of this as our Pentecost Sunday here, okay? We're breathing the spirit of the patriarchy into you. Now, it's up to you to go back to wherever you came from. Put it to use in your life, with your family, your friends. Call it speaking in tongues if you want to, okay? Because you're going to know how to talk to the people in your life. I don't. But hopefully we've been able to give you a lot of information today that will prevent you from having to learn the hard way. And even if because I've talked to a couple guys here who've been, totally T-boned, life's turned upside down, they thought they had the perfect family, and then the wife steps out on them. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Well, what you don't want to do is get zeroed out. You don't want to pull an Anthony Bourdain. All of the tools you need are in this room. All the resources you need are in this room. We've given you everything to pick up and move on and not get burnt again. And if you've got kids, they're still your children, especially your sons. And you have a duty, I'm using that word specifically, a duty, a responsibility to your children from your seed, whether it's girls or boys, but in particular boys, because that's who's going to be fighting the fight when we're gone. If we want that natural order to remain, and to be dominant again, it's on you. It's on you guys. When you go home, for the next generation and the generation after that. Talked to a guy here, a gentleman, I think he told me he was 70 years old. He's not here for himself. He's not even here for his kids. He's here for his grandkids. He wants to save his grandkids because he knows what they're up against. So we're all at different stages, but we all hopefully walk away with information that we can apply to our lives. But you're the new apostles. And this isn't a religion. It's a mindset, and it's also, when I first read The Rational Male, remember my wife told me, she said, because when I brought Rollo on the program, she goes, it's all the stuff you've been saying, except he wrote a book and made money on it. But it was. But I had never seen it put together so concisely, so completely. And everything all of a sudden starts to click. And once you get the red pill or become red pilled, you'll never see things the same way again. You can lie to yourself, you can go back to the old way, but you'll hate yourself. You'll hate yourself. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's finally, we have the game book, the rule book that women have had all along. We weren't privy to, imagine sitting your kid out on a football field, right? He doesn't know how to play football. What's going to happen to him? He's going to get crushed, right? Well, here's the rule book on the game and how to play it. And it's up to you, men, the patriarchs here, to take that rule book home and explain the game as it applies to your sons, your family.
That segues perfectly into how I want to kick this thing off.
Right.
And before I do that, we talk about all of us going on here, duty. We talk about men having the duty. Mm-hmm. All of us are filling ours. We're coming up here, standing by our message, putting it forward, and dealing with the consequences as they come. So are companies, though. There are men who are also doing their duty. This company, this show is sponsored by Tactical Soap. They're putting their brand, their bottom dollar, and their company's existence on the line every time we say that. Because if they're coming after us, they're coming after who supports us. But there are companies who are also doing it. There are men in the crowd who are also living it, pushing back, standing up. Just because we're on the stage, we got the mic right now. There are a lot of men out there filling that duty, and it's great to see that tide rising because all of our boats are lifting with it. And with that, Pat, not to put you in the hot spot, but you were talking about putting it to use when they go home. And to begin, these men come here. They're red pill. They become red pill aware. They're awakened. They go home, and they can't help but see the strings inside their church. And all churches, it seems, are starting to push a different narrative inside that is anti-male, anti-masculine headship.
Every major Christian denomination has been infiltrated by the feminine imperative. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. I still go to church, okay? My church, although it looks like a patriarchy from the outside because you see an all-male priesthood, I'm here to tell you, it's not the guys that are running the church. They haven't been running the church in a long time. It's the women. You go into any Catholic church, and probably about 70% of the people there are female. They're up on the altars. They're Eucharistic ministers. They're the ones that have the pastor's ear. They're the ones that are pushing all of this, this inclusiveness, this tolerance, the diversity, what I call the new Trinity, right? And there is practically not a church out there that has not been infiltrated to one degree or another.
Now, do we think the church has a chance? Are these guys, do they leave the church? I mean, you're starting to see what influence can you make? Because when you rise up, you don't have to speak in tongues, but you have to say something that relates, but people aren't going to like it, and they start pushing back.
Yeah.
But from there, it's just, what, attrition? You're all just going to run away from the church, or do you stay and try to build it up? I mean, I'm talking actionable advice to the guys who's like, I am faithful, but the flock that I'm with,
Right.
I can't run with them. They're going somewhere that I don't believe is the right way for us.
Well, with the Catholic Church, and I can speak about that firsthand, what you're going to see here probably in the next 5 to 10 years is you're going to see a massive collapse here in the United States in particular, because the people that are putting money into the collection basket are people my parents' age, and they're dropping like flies. And most of the kids, when I went to grade school, I had like 80 kids. We had two classes, 80 kids in my class. I bet out of 80, maybe 3 of us still go to church. 3. That's it. And what you're going to see is they're not going to have the money for the buildings anymore. They're going to be shutting down more and more churches. You see it all around the country. And what you're going to be left with is like just it's going to be a remnant church. A remnant. It's going to be tiny compared to what it is today. And that's where people, like the men, the patriarchs in this room, that's where you can, and again, another religious term, resurrect the church.
Yep.
But it's gonna collapse. They can't keep doing what they're doing. Even in evangelical circles, man. I've talked to pastors. They don't want to talk about homosexuality. Why? Because it might offend somebody. Probably has a son, a daughter, a family member, a friend. I don't want to talk about that. You know, I don't want to talk about divorce. Pastors can't talk about divorce because you've got pastors that have been divorced 2 times themselves. They're up there. That's sort of off the list. We can't do that, right? And all sorts of things. And what you wind up with is a very watered-down version of Christianity that doesn't mean jack squat. And now we're into entertaining people, like in the mega churches, you know. Let's get a really good band up and let's, praise and worship. And we've got great programs for the kids. What the hell's that got to do with Jesus and the gospel?
It's all sizzle, no steak.
Yeah.
So to go to the other side of that, with the Latter-day Saints, you were talking in your speech about how you have this paradise and you see the walls closing in. But for right now, what do you think that your faith is doing right to where you're able to maintain that, little oasis of yours?
Well, I think one of the big distinctions is that rather than seeing the church as something, and obviously with Catholicism, there's a lot of similarities here, but then with a lot of Protestantism or anything else, there's this idea of the church is being directed by the people who choose to worship together. Whereas within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in a modern living church that is being guided directly through revelation, and we're led by a prophet who is like Moses or Abraham or anybody else. And so we are, in a lot of ways, protected from a lot of this because it is not a bottom-up system within our church where people can agitate for change, where people can come in and demand that these things happen, but it's a top-down system where we're told through revelation what God wants us to do. And as in a lot of ways, we have been and still continue to be very protected by it. Now, at the same time, culturally, there's a contingent of people, and especially within the United States and amongst millennials, there's a growing contingent of people who are upset with our church and its policies when it comes to things like gay marriage or not having any women within the priesthood or any women that are clerical leaders or all of these other kind of social justice ideas or identities. But thankfully, we continue to receive messages of both love and at the same time messages of the idea that this isn't going to change. This isn't going anywhere.
Right.
Our church is not going to adopt gay marriage. You're not going to have women who become apostles. Those are core doctrines, and because that's not something that people can agitate for, we're protected against the idea that you just get enough people to vote for it, especially because we don't even have a paid clergy. Our leaders are all laymen, and so we're not even as affected by the idea that I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my status within the church, because even our idea of having a particular calling or serving within a role within the church, it doesn't even grant a certain a level of status. And so we're very blessed to be protected from a lot of this because of just the structure in the organization, and then even more so the source of the authority and where that comes from.
I think.
Can I jump in on that a minute? Because I had a conversation with Tanner yesterday. Recently had an opportunity to be around a rather large Mormon community. I talked about that natural order. And if I had to pick one church, not necessarily based on their belief system, but what faith, what church is best for the family, I would have to pick the Mormons. And I tell you why, and I learned a lot about this too. Like when you're married in the Catholic Church or Christian denominations, when you exchange your marriage vows, it's still death do you part. And correct me if I'm wrong with this Tanner, but when you get married when your marriage is sealed in the temple, okay, as a Mormon, it's forever, forever. Not I get out of death forever, okay. but and this is what's so cool, because they not only believe that they're going to be in the afterlife together as husband and wife, but the family's going to be with them. And that was like an epiphany for me. And then I started to understand every family that I saw, every Mormon family I saw, that natural order was there. It was beautiful. You knew who the dad was. You knew who the mom was. You knew who the kids were. Everybody was happy. But
it's almost like you see what right looks like.
Absolutely.
Hey,
absolutely.
you're smiling genuinely.
Yeah,
There's joy in that
it's
family.
Like,
why are these guys so angry?
Why are you so happy? And when he talked about things not negotiable, his church is doing what a good father should do with his children: set boundaries. And you set boundaries for a reason. And I guess that's the beauty of that faith. But when you look at the families, and just the way they all work together, help each other out, it's got almost like a squeaky clean image. But there's a reason for that, because it supports the natural order.
Now, when you were talking about the top down, and that's how you can maintain, in your speech, Rollo, you were talking about how the red pill is bottom up. And I believe for any resurgence of a masculine faith that's positive masculinity, that's going to be the bottom up. And your fourth book, I mean, people don't want to talk about these things. It's a soft, and you wrote a freaking book on it. So these men, they're going to be reading book 4. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, all right, I want to change things. And in the bottom up, how can a father filter this message from, society's blasted them with, support the Uber allies, support the sisterhood. These guys have book 4 of Rational Male. They're like, no, I don't want to support that anymore. I want to filter it and give the message I want my children to receive.
Well, the reason I started writing book 4 was because I had so many guys who would read one of my first 3 books, and they would say, I'm a Christian, how does this apply to me? Or I was running into sort of the old guard Christian male pastors who had a real problem with it. For obvious reasons in the first book, but I think that they still saw some value in it. And I think a lot of, and I don't mean to just pick on Christian men right now, because a lot of this is across religions right now, but men are leaving the church in droves at record. People are leaving the church or religion, whether that's Christianity or Catholicism or Judaism, whatever. People are leaving religion en masse right now. But primarily, it is men who have decided, there's nothing for me in these churches anymore. There's nothing for me to, what's the reason for me to go there? Now, the more devout men will say, well, you should want to because you're religious or because you need to honor God, and so this is what you're supposed to do. Well, they can only go so far in a church that is actively hostile towards men in that church, and that's one thing that I've really discovered in my research for this book, which is quite extensive now. I've had a lot of help with it, obviously. But I think the main reason I'm writing this book is because guys, they see the truth in the red pill. They see the objective, intersexual dynamics, and they usually have one of 2 responses. The first one is they'll say, well, I'm a Christian. How am I going to use this for my benefit in in my religion or from my particular my standpoint? Maybe they don't believe in premarital sex. Maybe they have a really tightly wound up idea of what religion should mean for them, and so, but they still can't help but see the truth. It's like when we talk about one of the reasons we call it red pill is because there's no going back once you see that. Once you see the code in the matrix, and so I'm showing these guys the code in the matrix, and they want to find some way to reconcile it with their religious beliefs, and So there's those guys who are seeking answers. They're saying, I'm in a sexless marriage, but I'm a Christian. I can't divorce my wife. I can't get out of it. Or my wife has all the authority in our marriage, but I'm a Christian and I can't leave. Right? I'm bound by my religious beliefs to live a particular life, but that life is becoming more and more untenable because of everything. And I see why it is untenable because I read The Rational Male, and so there's guys that will hit me up and say, how do I organize that? How do I come to terms with that? So that was reason number one. The other side of that coin is that I meet guys who are, and they generally are pastors or they're religious leaders, and they're younger guys. They're anywhere between their mid to late 20s into their mid 30s, somewhere around there. And they're trying to find some way to create a ministry around bringing men back into the church, and to bring men, whereas the church used to be something that was, I think the most popular idea of thinking of a church is patriarchal, right? I mean, well, it's always been by men, for men, and what are you talking about when I say, the feminine imperative has assimilated most mainstream religions right now? Women fight me on that because they say, no, religion is patriarchal. Well, that's only true insofar as who those patriarchs are trying to appease at any one time. Right now, most churches, no matter what it is, end up being businesses. What I see is interesting is the religions that try to, or the religions that have successfully managed not to be so commercialized, are usually the ones such as Mormonism or the Amish. They're not out there building mega churches, with the Mennonite beers and building a church. Hey, let's make a mega barn. Mega barn, right?
Money changers.
Yeah.
Money changers.
Well, so what happens is because we've commercialized religion, who is the primary consumer in the United States and in Western society is women. Women control something like 80% of the household wealth in the United States. I've got a lot of the stats for consumerism, but it's a well-known fact for any marketer or branding guy that women are the ones who make the purchases. They make the major purchases. If it's a house, if it's a car, if it's I was joking the other day.
Make women great again hat.
I was joking the other day that women dress their men. Right, because men can't be bothered with style. I mean, Tanner, men can't be bothered with style, and so generally, it's like I was talking on Pat's show on Friday. We were talking about how women will go and make the purchases for men and dress them up, and they're like their little dress-up dolls. They got the dress-up little Johnny, and here's my husband. I'm going to dress him up too, and that's the consumerism side of all of that. And so what do these pastors do? Well, they have to appeal to that who
becomes a business.
Yeah, it becomes a business.
It's more than it's that prophet has become God.
Right. Prophet has become God, and so how do they appeal to their base? Their base is the female consumer. So what happens is we go from church culture to doctrine to controlling the faith, and that's a main theme in Book 4. Is how we go from one particular faith or one particular religion or organization to a religion that is assimilated by the feminine imperative and ultimately becomes this religion of inclusivity that ignores all of the old doctrine from the religion that they're supposed to be a part of. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later here, but I wanted to say that there's men who see this and they realize that they have to appeal to women, so they have to flatter the feminine imperative to keep the lights on and the tithe checks coming in. But they also notice that there's no men in the church anymore, that it's 80% men. Or the men that are in the church are either they were children who grew up in the church, they were boys who grew up in the church, and now they're still a part of that church. Or they are the men that their wives dragged into the church to be a part of that because that was women are making the authority. They're the authority in the house right now. And so, hubby, we're going to go to church today and you're going to like it. And there's, men have a lot of responsibilities and work and everything else that they're doing as it is. They don't want to sit in and listen to a sermon about how they need to do better and need to do better and need to do better because the pastor is at the pulpit saying, men, you are bad. You aren't living up. You know, if your wife is displeased with you, it's because God is displeased with you. So we were talking about this yesterday, is we put women as an intermediary between God and man. So if your wife is not having sex with you, it means that God is displeased with you. You're not doing
The church
something.
is doing opposite of what the Bible
Yeah,
says.
Elliott had that image of the order.
Yeah, that's what
that
we
was
talked
powerful.
about, and I want to talk about our workshop because our workshop was fantastic. I actually wanted to keep doing our workshop.
But I think it's even more insidious than that because it's not necessarily that woman is the intermediary, because if you think about it, the way that religion and marriage and everything are supposed to be tied together is you have man and woman, and then rather than focusing on coming together, you both come toward God, and then that brings you closer together. So it's this kind of triangle idea. And the problem is that within so many of these cultures and these religions, we've flipped the triangle. And so it's as man gets closer to God, then he's allowed to get closer to woman. And then we shape God in the image of woman as well. And so it's this idea of your wife becoming your God. And it's this whole, it just skews everything. It's so insidious that way.
And that's exactly why it has been so easy for the feminine imperative to assimilate mainstream religions right now. Because what they do is they insert themselves before God. They become the Sadducees or the Pharisees. You have to go through them to get to God. Well, now women and womankind have become the Sadducees and the Pharisees, where you have to go through them as an intermediary. Well, there are some guys in the church who are realizing this, and they're wondering, where did all the men go?
Right.
And so what they see is the manosphere, and that's where the men have gone. They're all here in this room right now.
Let me jump in on that real quick, because we've had this talk off air. Here's the thing: there's pastors, preachers that are reaching out to him. They want to, we're red pill. They're not really red pill. What they want to use is the red pill is bait to bring you back into the church so they can give you more of the feminine imperative.
Do not do it.
Yeah, do not
Don't
do it.
do it.
That's what's going on. With some
Well,
of
like
these guys.
after we had, and Elliott joked with me afterwards. It's like he said, we need to start our own religion because or our own church, And it's, I thought it was kind of interesting because when I'm listening to you and I'm listening to Tanner, because Tanner changed up his speech this year. It wasn't no longer about looks and
Didn't have to be the style guy.
style. You were talking about
There's more to you than that?
Yeah, surprise.
yeah, you're a lot deeper than that. Right? And so what I see is a lot of guys still have that thirst for religion, but they see that something's wrong in religion, and they don't want to have anything. There's nothing for men in the church anymore. If you're watching this and you're a pastor and you have a problem with me or anybody else on this panel or anything else, the reason men are not in your churches is because you're still blue pill and you're still
Weak.
You're still weak, but you don't realize that you are. You don't understand the message that you are putting out there because you're still locked in the matrix. You're still caught in this idea that if I don't say the right thing, the women will leave the church. And you're right. They will leave the church because it has fundamentally changed over the course of, I would say, at least the last 30 or so years. Now, I'm talking from a perspective of Protestant evangelical churches, but this applies to a lot of other churches. And so to finish my point here is guys were, that was the other half of that. There was guys who are, pastors, or most of them are youth pastors, and they're trying to figure out how am I going to get the boys and the men back in here, because we have all of these single mothers here who need, to wifing up, and we got to make them feel like they got to man up. And if we don't man up, if you're not, all they're really offering is responsibility. 100% responsibility and 0% authority. So that's their failed message and all that. But they see this. They see that the manosphere is where all the men in the church have gone. They're looking for answers.
I think Tex made a great point on that when he was talking about losing faith and then going back to redemption. Going back, waking up, and I'm going back, but I'm going back on my terms.
Men are walking away from the church. They're like you're talking about. They're voting with their feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But guys like me walked away years ago because the Methodist church that I grew up in is no longer the Methodist church that I know. There's female pastors that are preaching feminism and equating husbands to being another child in the family. I got walked out of that church, but I still continue to try to visit now and then because there's something calling to me that I want to hear that. I grew up that. I lost that, and now I'm trying to get back to that. What I have found when I drive through my little Texas town is that I look in the parking lots when I'm driving to go check out a church. Where are all the cars, right? The LDS church has got more cars in their parking lot can hold, and they're going down the darn street, parking on the street, right? And then when I go out to some more traditional churches, they're a little bit sparse. What I'm seeing is the rise of the Bible churches with the band and all that. And if you get the right one, that we visited a couple, that there's actually good preaching word of God, trying to bring people to Christ and that kind of thing. And so far, the one that we visited lately has not had any of that feminist crap that's come through. And I'm surprised, I'm shocked. My wife kind of likes the band thing, and I'm kind of liking the preaching. I'm like, hey, maybe we'll go back again next week. And until they start dropping that hammer with their social justice stuff, I'm going to continue to go back and drink from that fountain one more time.
What's interesting is we called, starting your own religion. When the fraternity, when we come together to do Zooms, we call it going to church. We're going to have those discussions and talk about the things they're not allowed to talk about. And Tanner brought up a great point where the church and religion is not what it isn't. That the church is not the thing that has all these things wrong with it. There is a purpose. It serves a purpose. And Sam, you've had a wild ride. People, what is the church? These guys looking to go back to religion. There's good to be found in faith, in having faith, in being a father trying to instill religion.
First of all, Jesus said, you are the church. As a Christian, you are the church. And when you're fighting the gates of hell, all of us have fought the gates of hell in different ways. Me in my career, you in your marriage. And the fact is, if you want to fight the gates of hell, you're not finding God in the church. You're finding an emotional experience made for women. So to fight the gates of hell, you are the walking church in what you do. And the first place we find Jesus in his ministry in the Bible, he's at a party with the leaders of the land and a lot of people that, a lot of the Christians that I grew up with in the Southern Baptist Church would call thugs, and the rich people. And the fact is that that's where Jesus was. And you know what the complaint about Jesus was from the head of that party? What is going on here? You brought out the top shelf wine at the end while we're already really drunk and we couldn't enjoy it? I mean, this is what Jesus did. He hung out with thugs, the worst people in the world. And my place is in the world, not of it. And it's the same thing with you and where you are in your daily life. You are the church in your workplace. God is no longer in that church. 80% of the Bible is skipped in that church. The Bible is a masculine book, and the Mormon church has got it right. It's amazing. I was taught growing up that the Mormon church is a cult. I no longer believe that, especially after being around Tanner and being in Hollywood all these years. I'm around Mormons all the time.
It just means he's good at it.
I got you.
We're all converting.
Yeah, so you leave religion because that's what it is. The church is what Jesus called the money changers. Jesus didn't get angry that much in the Bible, but he got really mad at the money changers, which is your mega church. And I know you're getting an emotional experience there, but I've died 3 times since the hit and run accident, and I know my God. I'm closer to my God than I've ever been because my pastor is the Holy Spirit. I don't need to go and listen to a man who's telling me to be a feminized male, to feminize myself, when the Bible tells me, because that's where I'm getting it from, is the Bible. The Bible tells me how to be a man. That is why all of you, the pastor, that's why all of your men have made their church the manosphere, the rational male, Rollo Tomassi, Hunter Drew, Ivan Throne, because these men know God. They know our Creator. And the reason that they write from a secular perspective and throw a few F words in there is to not isolate. Is to, I'm sorry, but you're the choir. So this is to not isolate the people who are not worshiping our Father all the time. And in my life, to keep from literally selling my soul to the devil, If I had remained in the church, even though I never missed church until I was 22, if I had remained there, I would have signed one of those contracts and I would have sold my soul. But instead, I choose our Creator. I love Jesus, and the Holy Spirit is my pastor. Holy Spirit is your pastor. You don't need that church. And until it changes, which it will not, because it is addicted, it is a business. And the megachurch pastors, think about it. Your megachurch pastor makes almost 20 times what you do. And you are the church everywhere you go as you walk through life.
I've always, my faith is, the church of one. I have my personal relationship, and that's how I deal with it. But when I view men coming together, I'm working with this idea, and I'm kind of freestyling right now, is, it's like 1 + 1 = 5. What does that mean? 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, but not all ones are equal. Sometimes you have very strong men. Sometimes you have men who have a lot of power, and that man plus one other man, that equals 5 men because of how much they're bringing to the table. It's not just 2. And that's the group aspect of all this. That's us coming together, breaking the electronic barriers. So when I look at Strength Camp, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry,
had a great flow.
You take that, and then I'll push back.
Strength
a little bit
Camp,
when you're done.
when I see all those men coming together and the things you're doing and allowing them to freely express themselves, I'm like, that's a strong connection. That's a strong flock. And earlier we were talking about how the flock is just as important as the faith. And you're building it. And how can men do the same? Build their flock. Find one and run with it. Find the lions and run with it instead of trying to be the king of sheep.
I think it's important for men to have an authority, no matter who we are, how top of the pile we are. Even Donald Trump looks above, looks for a father. And so, there's this sense that we could father ourselves, but I don't think it's true. I think deep within our DNA is this never-ending need and hunger for guidance. To have a good earthly father is one thing, but to know that your earthly father has a father above keeps that lineage going, keeps that authority going, keeps the divine Father's blessing coming down through the father into the family. And so I see the value in religion. I see why men created religion. And I see why there are so many people that are so hungry and so lost and so fatherless, even if the flesh father is in the home, but the flesh father has no authority because he's not drawing it down from above. And if we were to come together, we've got to come together under one father, one family, one code of ethics, one culture, one understanding, one belief, and a unity in our devotion and our direction. And so I don't know what religion, I don't know where that religion is, but I know that seed is in the heart, and it will require the soil of a good home, the water of the good nourishing from the mother, and the warmth and power from the Son, from the Father, from the above. And so those are the elements that are required, and however we decide to go about finding those, the search will be continuous until we reach that place.
We talked about that the other day, the search, right? The struggle with the faith. And we all struggle. Men of faith traditionally struggle with their faith. I think that's okay. I think people need to understand it's okay that I'm not feeling it this week. I'm still struggling. I'm still searching. I've got bloody knees. That's okay. Too many guys just completely give up. At some point in your life, you may feel a pull back. The question is, where do we go and how do we fight it? Once you're red-pilled, you can't hear one of those sermons anymore without getting up and walking out. You're literally going to get up and leave. So it's a struggle. Where do we find that? I agree. Where do you find that group of men? So.
Well, I love that Elliott brought up the point that there needs to be that channel of authority, because I think one of the assumptions that we're operating under is the idea that the purpose of religion is to find God and then to worship God, and it's this idea that religion is man-made or that it should be man-made, when really religion is God revealing truth to us and giving us the opportunity to know and to better understand Him. That's why, you go back 200 years and you would have all these different churches arguing that we are the one true religion, because it's not all roads lead to Rome. It's God wants us to find Him. He's telling us who He is and what He expects of us, and He's only going to do that through one channel of authority. And because we are just as, I'm not omniscient, I'm not a God, none of us are. If we just think that all we need to do is worship God in our own way, or that our interpretation of the Bible or any other book of Scripture is good enough, then we're just as guilty as these other pastors or as the women in the world of creating God in our own image. Or if we do that through a group of men that none of us have any authority, none of us receive anything directly from God, then we're collectively creating God in our own image. And as much as that can build good things, that doesn't actually get us to reach our full potential the way that finding the true religion will, and getting that direct line of authority will. So that authority thing, I agree, Elliott, that's absolutely huge that you have to have that. Because our authority, we don't have any as men. The state does, right? That's it. Rollo, you talk about this all the time. Exactly. But when you do have authority and it comes from something higher than the state, and you're part of a belief system and a culture that acknowledges that, then that's where the power that can maintain families really comes from.
Well said. So we're about to hit the 20-minute mark. So if you have questions, they're going to be lining up. Chad will have the microphone. We're going to continue on. Once I see a couple guys over there, we'll start accepting questions.
I think one more thing, if I might interrupt here. My dad would take me out on Galveston Bay fishing on Sunday morning sometimes, and it was a treat, right, not to have to go to church. Dad and I got to go fishing. This was awesome. Dad's cracking open a beer at 6:30, that kind of thing, And I would have this discussion as I got a little older, and I'm like, Dad, we're in, Mom's in church, and my sisters are in church, and all that. We're out here, and he was like, I can get just as close to God out here on Galveston Bay fishing as I can sitting in that church. I go to that church because I want my family to go to that church, he said, but some days I feel better out here about it. And I think if I go home, and as over the years, even though maybe we fell away from going to the church, my son and I still had those moments out on Galveston Bay on Sunday mornings where we talked about life and we talked about God. And I think you can take that, you're going to be that authority figure to him, and you can take that out no matter where you are, in the middle of the woods, in your living room, discussing things, and that's where the lessons are being taught, maybe not necessarily in the church.
And in the church, where are the lessons coming from, really? Where are they coming from? I can tell you firsthand that they're templates, and those templates for your pastor's sermon, the pastor's sermons will generally be very similar across the country, because they're not scripted 100%, but they are templates that they go from. And those templates, who is the best person in the world to reach women in this world? They're in Hollywood. And those templates are written by the same people that write the top shows that women watch. So that's what you're getting in your church. And if you want to know God, if you want to experience His joy and pleasure every day, you need to be in the manosphere. Read Rollo Tomassi. Get in the Fraternity of Excellence. Read Dalrock.
Yes.
Dalrock's a huge one.
Yes. I want to give Dalrock a big plug. If you're not familiar with Dalrock, you should be familiar. If you're watching this and this is something that's speaking to you, read Dalrock's blog. It's, WordPress or dalrock.wordpress.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just getting scripts from Hollywood. And the beautiful music, they hire the most talented people in the world to be able to make music that emotionally...
When you were talking about that, just like emotionally, thank you. Stop right there for a moment, because the reason why you see what Dalrock calls the Sunday morning nightclub is because, it's true, because the reason for that is you see this emotional appeal to the emotions of women, because women, I've written several essays on this about the interpretive processes, like how we process information. There's the instinctual, there's the emotional, and then there's the rational. And for women, it is instinct, emotion, then reason, if they get to that. Then it is men, instinct, reason, and then emotion. And so the reason why you see all of this emotionalism and this appeals to emotion in modern churches right now is because that is what leaves an impact with women. When the old pickup artists were 100% right about this. It doesn't matter whether you leave that woman with a negative or a positive impact, just that you leave an emotional impact on her. They got that right, guys. And so what I'm seeing now, while you have the music and everything, and the tears streaming down, and and all this kind of stuff, and this just emotional surrender. I'm not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but that is the way that we preach, and the way that the message is couched is they're trying, and maybe a lot of pastors and a lot of religious leaders in the mainstream don't realize this because they just say, hey, this is what works. This is what I've been patted on the back for a very long time. So it must be from God because I'm getting all of this positive reinforcement from the ladies in the church, and they're saying, I love that, Pastor, thank you very much.
It's a drug hit.
Yeah, it's a dopamine hit, but they're appealing to emotionalism, and that's what, and they've just escalated it. How can we get that emotional high that much more? Because that's what's getting the women in the, asses in the seats. That's what they want.
And the only place where God lives is in the church. No, we have lives the rest of the week, and you are extremely stressed in your life and in your work, and you also need that emotional hit. And for a Christian, that is called the Bible. The Bible is filled with everything that you need. But to be able to make sense of it all, you do need Rollo's blog, you need Dalrock, because the church isn't giving you any of that. It's only demonizing you for being a man. If you want to be Gilletted, go to the Christian church.
Tex has peanut butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that question.
Yeah.
All right, questions. You can direct it to a panel member or just throw it out there and let one of us run with it.
Hey, good morning, Patriarchs. Not sure if you all are familiar with Alice Bailey, but in the 1940s, she put together a 10-point plan of the New World Order. Just a few things out of there. People can go look it up, but it talks about taking God out of education, reducing parental authority over their children, and the one that gets me the most is destroying the Judeo-Christian family structure. I believe that this is the feminine imperative Bible, and it's what has been used to insert the feminine imperative into American society and culture. My question for you, anyone on the panel, is what do you believe is the time period or event, or, Rollo, I know you talked about the sexual revolution, you talked about the past 30 years, this degradation of the church. I think it's earlier than that. So what do you all think in that regard to that question?
Do you want me to go? Okay. I have always maintained that feminism, there are no waves of feminism. I know that's going to be shocking to some of you, right? Because there's first wave feminism was good, right? It got them the vote. That was good. No. It has been the same supremacism, the female supremacism movement, the same hate movement it has always been since 1848 in Seneca Falls. If you go and you look at any of the charter from those times, and if you do any of, and it's really easy to do this, they just don't want you to do. You'd have to go and actually spend the time to do a little bit of research. But I can show you news clippings and articles from the late 1800s into the early 1900s where feminists were firebombing churches. They were plotting assassinations. It was a very, very violent movement. People want to say that, it's third wave feminism has really corrupted the good side of the equality-based side of feminism, which is just it's horseshit. I'm sorry to say it, it's just horseshit. Feminism has always been the same thing. It has always been a hate movement, and the only reason we even think of it in terms of phases or of waves is to, in some way, legitimize it in the past. It has been the same movement. It's just been interrupted by wars and cold wars and social events that have, put it on hold. And now, with the advent of hormonal birth control and giving women unilateral control of the reproductive process of all human beings right now, and the sexual revolution. Well, oddly enough, what happened right after that? The sexual revolution was started because of that. And here we are, if you figure it's right around like 1967 or so, right around there, here we are in 2019. In a very, very short time, look at how the social upheaval that has happened in that wake. So what the sexual revolution did was it just unleashed or unfettered, hypergamy, of course, but the feminine imperative. It was held back because it didn't have free reign. It didn't have free agency. There were checks and balances prior to the sexual revolution, such as the church, such as social stigmas.
Rollo, can I jump in on something
Yeah,
you said?
go
Because
ahead.
Rollo used the term everybody here needs to use when it comes to feminism. Feminism is a hate movement. It's not about equality. It's never been about equality. I'm fond of saying, he who controls the language controls the debate. Doctors say 50% of the properly identifying the problem is 50% of the cure. You can't fight an enemy that you don't know who it is or what you don't see. This is a hate movement. This idea of us just being equals, it was just a great big ruse. That's all it was. But you have to use that language to confront it. And feminist has to be referred to. They tell you the KKK is a hate group. Neo-Nazis, hate groups. Totally agree. Feminism is a hate group.
Not only that, Alice Bailey was a part of the Church of Satan. Feminism is a concept
See, now I'm gonna have
that
to go
was
look
beautifully
this up.
designed by the Church of Satan. Make no mistake. And most Christian women that I talk to will tell you that they're not a feminist. But I guarantee you, you are a feminist.
So to answer that last question, I'm one of the few guys in this room that actually lived through the sexual revolution as a young kid. I was born in '61, and trust me, as a young man in the late '60s, I'm thinking I want some of that, because everybody was out screwing everywhere, right? It was awesome, right? So that's to back up what Rollo was saying. I mean, with birth control hit, next thing you know, the sexual revolution in the '60s hit, and that's when I saw firsthand families getting pulled apart. I saw divorce ramp up. And there was just no fault divorce at that point. It used to be a stigma, and then it just kept going. So to answer the question, yeah, I think that was the turning point from my perspective.
Before we go to the next question, I want to just make a point that you guys need to take home. You hear Pat say hate movement. That's a heavy word. You can't bring that home. That's not PC. This has not been the most lively discussion. Men have heavy talks. Men use heavy words. We talk about heavy as the head. Are you willing to, do that? You have to have those conversations and be able to use those words. They are heavy, and they will have people looking at you. Why are you saying feminism is a hate movement? It's about equality. Don't back down. Have these conversations. This was not, again, some jovial, we're sitting, joking around, talking about PUA stuff. We're talking about religion and fatherhood. Not the most fun subject, but here we are, because that's what men do. They talk about these things because they matter. So use the right terms. Don't beat around the bush and make it softer.
And the
Men do hard
question was
things.
about this book from the 1940s and turning points. I mean, where were the different turning points? I'll tell you the one turning point that exponentially sped this up in the last decade. One book trilogy, 50 Shades of Grey. That book is the only book, well, it's a trilogy, but the first of those books in the trilogy was the fastest book in history to reach 150 million units sold.
And the biggest group buying it, Christian women.
I was about to say that.
The demographic.
Yeah.
And that's, I am very proud of everything I've done in my career, but I did some work on that project, and that is the one regret, major regret that I have in my career. And I know that it was targeted to Christian women.
Next question. That's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Gentlemen,
Can't touch that.
I have a couple of comments before I ask, not so much a question, but a clarification, okay? First of all, Jesus said in Matthew that, Peter, you are the rock, and on this rock I will build my church, and the powers of hell will not bring it down. So even though the church experiencing right now problems like it had in the past, I don't foresee, because no power, feminism or other, is going to bring down the church, okay? That's number one. Number two, Catholic Church has actually gone up in population with the exception of Europe. Every other continent over the last year, it has gone up in population. So I say to you guys, because this has been a weekend of 100% take control of your life, take control of your family, be patriarchs, be tough men, go ahead and fight for what is right. So if we fight for our families, if we fight for what we love, and we love our church, then our message, which is what I need clarification here, is we should be fighting for our church, not going away from it, not attending to it, not being part of it, but being involved in it and transforming it like we're trying to transform our country as patriarchs. So please clarify.
Let me jump in on that since there's a Catholic angle there. He's right, we got to save the church, but here's what you're missing. Your family is the church. It's the first church. You're not going to fix any denomination, any building, until you fix your family first. Family has to be the priority. It's got to be family first. And it's got to follow the natural order, the dad, the mom, the kids.
Well, and the other clarification to add to that, and this is kind of fun because this gets down to the big dispute between the line of authority between the restored Church of Christ versus the Catholic Church is, was Christ really saying that Peter was the rock? That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that what he was saying is that the fact that Peter knew who Christ was through revelation, that it wasn't through man, but it was not flesh and blood that have revealed it to me, but the Spirit, and that revelation is the foundation of the church, because that church won't ever fail, or that church will continue to remain. That's how God, and that comes back to this whole issue of authority. And so even then you can get down into the weeds of how it works, but just like Pat said, the family is more important than any other institution, because when all is said and done, there will not be, when Christ comes again, when whatever happens, any church will cease to exist, but family is an eternal unit that will exist forever. Right. And family is way more important than church. Church is the structure to create the ideal family situation.
And Christ established his church on earth for one purpose, the salvation of souls, okay? Not so you could get together on Wednesday night for fellowship and a good macaroni dish and maybe have a big band up on stage.
Absolutely.
We have gotten so far
Absolutely.
away, so far away from the original
appeal.
intent. It's not funny. It's become more of a social club. And who can entertain you better?
Nobody's saved by a social club.
Yeah.
Yeah, and families aren't saved by a social club.
What is the definition of the word church? You are the church. That's what Jesus said. You are the church. Not the building, not the business. The building, the business is called money changers in the Bible. Jesus said that. Jesus got angry. You are the church.
You know, this reminds me, this question here reminds me of the discussion we had with Dr. Everett Piper on your show. We were discussing the merits or the demerits of marriage today.
And why should a guy get married in 2019?
Why should a guy get married today? And we sort of distilled it down to a covenant marriage versus a contractual marriage. And the contractual, unfortunately, the contractual side of marriage is sort of, what do we say? It's Rome, it's Caesar, right? It's render unto Caesar kind of thing. If you're going to get married, you've got to do it, because Caesar says this is the way it works. It's really more like the feminine imperative says this is how things are going to work for you, and you are going to abdicate all authority and give and accept 100% responsibility with little or no authority over your marriage. So we distilled it down to the covenant side of things, like the idea of getting married for me is like people think that, oh, Rollo Tomassi, he's really down on marriage, but yet he's been married for 23 years. They think that because I don't advocate for marriage today that I am in some way down on marriage or there must be something wrong with it. No, I'm happy to tell you I'm happily married. Thank you very much. But I think that marriage is a great idea, and I think that it goes hand in hand with religion as well. There used to be, we didn't have a marriage contract. It was you would get in front of your family and friends and you would make a vow before God, and that was good enough. It wasn't, okay, you're going to get half of the kids and
Sign and date.
you're going to, sign and date this, please, because that's how it works. So what has happened is the world, the feminine imperative, has worked its way into marriage to make it into a contractual arrangement. My question that I put towards Dr. Piper was, wouldn't it be better to simply get back to that? What if we just, like Anthony, for example, and when Anthony was married, he just had that set of private ceremony, no contractual thing, and of course, that worked out to his benefit when he got divorced.
Right.
But there was that side of things where it's like, I love you, you love me, I agree to be your wife, I agree to be your husband. There's that, it's the marriage that's just before you, your friends, your family, and God. And then there is, let's put the state involved in all of this. And so what's happened is the state and the contract side of the contractual marriage has become, irrevocably combined with the covenant side of things. The state doesn't care whether or not whatever your arrangement is. If you're poly or you have some, if you're okay with cheating, then that's your arrangement. Right? So that's the feeling side of it. So I always want to say is like, I agree, and I think that marriage and monogamy are actually a bedrock of Western civilization. It's been something that's helped our species and us as just human beings to focus on other things, to put, to have some sort of, some tangible benefit to it. And we're seeing it being torn apart more. Mm-hmm. So there's like sort of the sentiment, the want to be married, the want to have all this, and there's the covenant side of things, and there's a contractual side of things. And so what happens is I'm trying to talk to Dr. Piper, and I'm saying, well, shouldn't we just simply get back to the real thing? Should we just not go back? And what he said is, no, we want to go and reform the contractual side so things are better for everybody in the contract. Of course, there's, he's very short on ideas when it came for that, but his first thought was to go and try to say, okay, well, I'm going to heroically stand up and be the last one on the hill to die for contractual marriage, even though we spent the last half hour or so defining the differences between covenant marriage and contractual marriage. And I see this very much in the same way as the church is right now. There is the original intent, the rules as intended, and then there's the rules as written. And so the rules as written right now is Sunday morning nightclub and emotional appeals to women, and church is a business, and we have to appeal to the business. So we can go and reform that, but how do we reform that? We still have to go to the covenant side of things. We have to get back to the real as opposed to rules as intended, rules as written. And the rules as intended side of things, I'm using a gamer term here, I'm sorry, but the rules as intended was what is the feel, what is the originality, what is the original purpose of the church, and what is the financial, what is the let's make a business side of church. And you have to get back to the real before you can go in and change anything in the given structure that is becoming increasingly more and more assimilated by the feminine imperative. I would challenge you to go drive around Florida right now and drive by a strip mall, and I will guarantee you will see a church in that strip mall. Mm-hmm. Because it's a game, it's a business. It's like I don't have any other way to make money. I think I'm going to go start a church here, and consequently, you're tax free and everything else. So why wouldn't you do that? Well, it becomes a franchise. People think I'm joking when I say it's a franchise. No, it's literally a franchise
with templates scripted in Hollywood.
Right. So we need to get back to the real, and I understand what you're talking about when it comes to how can we, I don't want to give up on the church, and I don't think anybody on here wants, and whether that's Christian or Jewish or Mormon or Islam or whatever, you're going to have to fight for that church at some point, and I think that's really where we're going. But to have some sort of legitimacy, to have a real, genuine desire, you cannot negotiate genuine desire. You've got to focus on that genuine desire first before you can move yourself into changing the structure of the church or the contractual side of the church as opposed to the covenant side of the church.
Which means have Christ in you. If you're a Christian, have Christ in you. That is where the church is. You are reading Scripture. You are listening to the Holy Spirit. And you're getting stronger by listening to the Holy Spirit, communicating with God that way. And then that way, that could give you the strength to go back into the church and influence them because you are filled with the Holy Spirit.
So, and men are going to look at it and they're going to say, how do we get back to that? How do we do this? And, we're out of time now. That we can talk about this all day, but that's what we're continuing to do with Red Man Group Patriarchs, the Red Man Group itself, anything else that branches off. We're continuing to find out, how do we do this? Let's get that discussion going. Let's bring in the experts and the change, the people who can actually influence change. So we're going to wrap up this episode.
At some point, you're going to have to take it back in.
I'm not going to lie.
As fathers, we have to make the decision, are my children better off in this church today with me, or do I need to go find a new church, or do I not go to church? You have to protect your kids and what message they're hearing and what they're being taught. It's on you.
Worked Up Rollo is my favorite Rollo. He's sitting here like, shut the hell up, Hunter. I got to finish this. So we're wrapping this one up. Again, we're up here, Faces Online, sharing our message. We got companies supporting us, what it is we're doing. 21Con itself has made all of this happen. Gentlemen, real quick, how can the men looking to hear more from you find you?
I've got a website, texasdom.com, working on a book right now. It's not just the whole DS stuff. There's a lot more stuff, masculinity, leadership, things like that for the family. Welcome you to come check it out.
Livefearless.com, livefearless.com, and of course at audible.com with the trilogy, the Rational Male audiobooks, and coming in a few weeks, The 9 Laws by Ivan Throne.
There we go.
So you guys can find me, especially talking about these topics. The best spot is Twitter, so it's at Tanner Guzzy. And then also, if you're interested in learning more about what my particular religion is, just go to churchofjesuschrist.org or mormon.org, and you can learn more about it there.
I'm Rollo Tomassi.
Who knew that?
I'm Elliott Hulse.
I got to plug anything?
Pat Campbell, a couple ways you can find me. Probably the best is on Twitter, at PC1170. That's at PC1170. And do a program every Friday out of Tulsa with Rollo Tomassi. It's not only streamed live at talkradio1170.com, but we also put a podcast up. So if you go to Google and put Pat Campbell Podcast, it'll come right up. Rollo's is the first one that's going to pop up. Also, we do the Red Pill 101 every Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, me and Rollo.
I'm Hunter Drew, the chief fucking patriarch. The21convention.org. If you want to attend this, we're wrapping up a 3-day week, the greatest event that's ever been put on for fathers by fathers. It didn't accidentally happen. Men came together, we did the work, we swapped the notes. If you want to support that, smash the like button. You know what to do. Share the message, reach out, get it to the fathers who need to hear this, and stay tuned because we've got a lot more episodes coming today. Take care.
Thank you, gentlemen.
What he represents is patriarchy.
We're here to do work as men, as patriarchs.
There's nothing more natural than being a father.